creative friends, it's Linda from Tuliloo Creates, and welcome back to my kitchen. Right now, I'm going to do a video about the steam canner. The reason I'm doing this is because I participated in this fabulous January collaborative, which is so much fun. Be sure and check it out. Go look at all the videos of it. Like and subscribe. It's so much fun. But I did a video yesterday on grapefruit marmalade, which, by the way, this is so awesome. There was just a little left, and I got to put it on my waffle this morning. Oh, my goodness. It's so good. But I used a steam canner to process it, and I had so many questions about it. I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a video about a steam canner. So the information that I have is actually a publication that you can get. It's the Oregon State publication for steam canners, use and precautions, and it is the SP50-1005. If you type that into Google, there will be a whole bunch of stuff, but if you look down, you'll eventually come across this publication, and all the information is right there. So in order to make sure that I don't forget anything, I'm going to basically read off of here what we're talking about. I do want to introduce you to my steam canner, though. This is by Victorinox, and it's actually the one that they show in the picture on this publication. There's a couple of reasons why I love it. I like the way the handles are on it. They're out. They're not like, I've seen one where it's just a molded thing, and I didn't like having to grab the metal so close to the hot water. I also like, and we'll talk about this in a minute, it actually has a temperature gauge on top, and I believe the Victorinox boiling water canner also has this as well. But I like that, and I'll show you why in a second. And I like the rack on it. It's a nice, steady, stable rack too. So a little bit about steam canners. So naturally high acid foods, which are foods that have a pH of 4.6 or lower. Those are things like fruits, jams, jellies, pickles. Those things can be processed in either a boiling water canner or a steam canner. So steam canners were not approved for a really long time, but it actually says here, let me read. Steam canners come with a shallow bottom, a wire rack, and a dome lid. And for years, steam canners were not recommended, but recent research has provided directions for their safe use. It also has a note, and it says, do not use the instructions that have come with your steam canner. They are not based on current research-tested methods and may lead to underprocessing. That's not saying you can't use this. It's saying they've had these for a really long time, and they've come up with updated ways to make it safe so that you can use it in canning things like your jellies and fruits and things. So steam canners, here's the considerations. The difference between a boiling water canner and a steam canner. You can can the same types of things, but there's a reason. You may have a product that you need to boil, that you need to process for a long time. That's not a candidate for a steam canner, because here it says steam canners are limited by the amount of water in the canner base. And because of their shallow base, they run the risk of boiling dry. So use with current research-tested boiling water canner recipes with a processing time of 45 minutes or less. This includes time adjustments made for altitude. That means if you ever look in your boiling water canner and we'll say at a certain altitude, process it for so many minutes. Over this altitude, add 5 minutes, and then add 5 minutes. You need to do that same adjustment with a steam canner. Steam canners require less water than boiling water canners, which is why I like them. There's a couple reasons. And they take less time to reach the boiling temperature because they're only boiling this much water, not like this much water. So it's really quicker. Also, it means that a filled steam canner will not be as heavy as a boiling water canner if you have to go move it off of the heat source. That's nice. And steam canners are only recommended for processing quarter pint, which is these little jelly jars, pint and quart jars. They can be fully loaded with jars, half loaded, or just have a single jar. I like that because in this one here, maybe I just want to have 2 jars. Boom, and I only have that much water, and it goes fast. And so that's kind of nice instead of having to fill up a whole thing with a whole bunch of water. So that's a good thing. And so jars must be processed in pure steam, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperature should be monitored with a thermometer placed in a vent port. So when you get a steam canner, there's a vent port here, this little hole. And so when you're boil water canning, when you reach boiling is when you set the time for your processing. So if something's 10 minutes, you wait for the water to boil. That could be up to 25 minutes before it even boils. Then you set once it's boiling, you put your 10 minutes on. With the steam canner, there's a vent hole. You have to wait, which only takes a few minutes because it's not that much water to heat. You wait for there's be a nice solid column of steam coming out of this vent port, 6 to 8 inches, like it's a good stream of steam. And then you can set your time. But in order to maintain, to keep an eye on it, what you can do is take one of these cool little thermometers and stick it in that vent port like that. And then you can just set it like that. And you can keep an eye on the temperature inside of your steam canner. So that's good. It says do not remove the lid at any time during processing, which would make sense because it's filled with steam. And if you lift the lid off, steam's going to go everywhere and suddenly it's going to be cool in there and then your things aren't going to process right. This canner, it says here some canners come with a built-in temperature sensor in the dome lid that in lab testing appear to be accurate. This Victorinox comes with, see that? I'm trying to get that ring light out of there. There you go. See that? That's a temperature gauge, and it has the different altitudes. Mine is the blue line because I'm 1,000 feet or below, and then each altitude goes up, and when that needle comes around and you're in the green, that's when you can start processing. So that's pretty handy. With that system, you don't have to have the temperature, the thermometer in the hole. So that's pretty much it as far as the steam canner goes. Oops, sorry. So here's also a couple of tips. In the bottom of the steam canner, see it's only that deep, you have a rack. This rack, you just put water in there, set your rack, and you want the water to come just above the rack, okay? Then you can put your jars in, and like I said, you could put 1 jar, or you could put 10. It doesn't matter how many you have, as long as they're on that rack and there's enough water. So I'm going to read you a little bit more of the before you begin section right here. Experience suggests better success with pints than quarts. Quarts are just big. You know what? I mean, juice, fine. I'll use quarts with juice in here. But really, if I was going to do, say, peaches, I don't think I would. I just would rather do those in a boiling water canner. But for juice, fine. It's only a 5-minute process. It's fine. Don't use gallon. You can do juices in half-gallon jars. Do those in the boiling water canner. They are not approved for a steam canner. Canner will be very hot. Keep jars in very hot water while preparing the jar contents or risk shattering the bottom of the jars when adding to the steam canner and or under processing if the product has the contents have cooled. So you want a nice hot jar. You want to put a hot product in it because if you have a cold jar with a hot product, it can shatter the jar. Or if you have a cold jar or a hot cold jar and you put a cold product in it and you set it on the canner, the temperature difference there can also break it. You don't want that to happen. And if for some reason you've gone long enough or forgot to put enough water in, or you're doing a couple batches and forgot to add water, if it boils dry, you just have to put water in there. You got to start over. Okay, so quick directions. Jars must be heated prior to filling. Keep the jars hot. Fill with only hot liquid and limit any cooling prior to processing. Use only current research-based boiling water canner recipes. Note the research-based references on the front. There's research. My favorite of all time is the National Center for Home Food Preservation. Just go there. Okay, place the rack in the bottom of the canner. Fill with water just above the top of the rack. Move to heat and preheat the water. So you just want it preheated. I like to keep my jars in there while it's preheating. That keeps them hot. And then you're going to load the canner and place the dome lid on the canner. So I will keep my jars in there as it's kind of preheating. You don't want it boiling. You just want it like warm in there. Just so that those jars are hot. I fill it with a hot product and I put it right back. This way there's no chance of it getting cool. The steam canner must be vented prior to processing. Once a full steady column of steam 6 to 8 inches is seen coming from the vent, you can begin your processing time. Temperature should be monitored throughout processing. Some canners you can follow the built-in thermometer. Others you might want to put a temperature gauge in the side. Do not allow the canner to boil too vigorously or it will boil dry. Another thing it'll do is it's kind of weird because you want that steam coming out, but then every once in a while your lid could go bloop and steam could come out. And then it sits there and goes bloop and steam comes out. If that happens, turn your stove down. You don't have to have your stove on high. You just need to make sure it's still boiling and your temperature is right, either with this or with your thermometer. You don't have to have, because every time it's just building up so much pressure from steam, it's having to release it. You don't need it there. So you can turn it down until it's just, you know, running right. Do not allow it to boil too vigorously, creating an underprocessed and potentially unsafe product, because it opens and it lets cool air in every time it bloops out that heat steam. Some can't, okay, then we get, do not allow, that's regulate the heat so the canner maintains the temperature between 210, 212 degrees. When processing time is completed, you remove it from the heat source and let it stand 5 minutes before removing the lid. Tilt the lid away from you so that the steam doesn't come up in your face. So the reason you do that is because it kind of cools and the atmosphere in there kind of levels out. Because if you go take the lid off really too quick, you could get a broken jar. You could also get siphoning, you know, where it kind of the temperature's too different and it expands and it will come out the jar. And then it tells you smart things like use a hot pad when you're moving it. Do not retighten screw bands after processing. You know, with the lids, you just leave them they are. And then they will pop just like as if they came out with a boiling water canner. You just process them the same way. So this one is the Victorinox. I like this one. Like I said, if you go in my Amazon store, you can see this one there. You can get it there. But this is my favorite just because it's got like the peace of mind knob is what I call it. All I have to do is look at that. If it's in the green, we're fine. And I can turn my heat down so that it's not so aggressively steaming out the sides and keep it in that green. And I know it's safe. Okay, so this is a steam canner. And I like to use it. And I like to use my boiling water canner. It just depends on what I'm doing. So if you're interested in this and you have any more questions, feel free to let me know. And once again, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you taking part. Thanks so much. Have a great day.